William Ato in Juba Malatori Hey Ambio in Ping William Ato in Benti Wala Kwaju Hey wow in Ping William Ato in Malkal Wala Pinyaram in Ping William
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are tuning in. To all of you, our viewers, welcome to Lagos State Media Beyond Boundaries. Today, this afternoon, we have our guest on board with us, Bash Mahandis engineer Hazim Al Khalid, who has just joined us now, and we have Professor Taj Al Kazin. He also on the board with us, my co-host, Majok Makur Malak. All our viewers, please share this video and like our show, our page, and subscribe for it. To give the introduction to Professor Taj, who has been with us for some shows that he has attended, Professor Taj trained and worked in Sudan, Sweden, South Sudan, Germany, United States of America, Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia, Kenya, Eritrea, Nigeria, Chad, Canada, and the United Kingdom in conflict and its resolutions, peace building, water resources, human resources, implementation of infrastructural and energy projects. He trained extensively in strategic studies, peace building, and alternative dispute resolution in the United Kingdom of Canada and Canada. Taj is a member of the Alternative Dispute Resolution Institute of Canada and the International Institute for Strategic Studies, IISS, London, UK. Between 1995 and 2023, he implemented consulting contracts in or relate to Africa for Oxfam, Canada, CIDA, World Food Program, the Government of South Sudan, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, UNICEF, Save the Children Fund, UK, Canadian Senate, Departments of Foreign Affairs and International Trade Canada, KPMG, the International Rescue Committee, Canada Africa Fund, Mercy Corps USA, the Forums of Federation, Right and Democracy Center, North Sudan Institute, the Center for Intercultural Learning USA, the World Bank Multi-Donor Trust Fund, and for the government of South Sudan and Shell Nigeria, among others. He was an adjunct professor at Carleton University Institute of Africa Studies and was a senior fellow at NPSIA of Charlottetown University in 2020 to 2023. He is the political analyst and author of several articles and assessment on conflict in South Sudan, IGAD or CPA, and South Sudan, Water or Nile Water, Women, Civil Society, Peace and Conflict Resolutions, Darfur Conflict Process, and general relating to the Horn of Africa. Tack was trained by St. Louis Wilson, Canada, first peace envoy to Sudan, as her personal advisor for 2 years. He is retired adjunct professor at Charleston University Institute of African Studies. In 2022, he was commissioned by the President of South Sudan to lead on intensive, wide-based consultations on dredging or clearing of the Nile water in South Sudan. In 2023, he co-organized with the Florida International University of Miami an international conference of 2 days on Nile River Basin and the Sud waterlands, climate change, adaptability, and sustainability. Professor Taj is frequently doing conflict analysis on the Horn of Africa. He is a regular commentator in the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, Radio Canada International, Radio France International, and lecturing frequently on issues of conflict in the Horn of Africa. Taj is currently accredited as adjunct professor at NPSIA, Charleston University, from March 2023 up to end of June 2028. Mr. Taj, you are highly welcome back to Lake State Media. You are highly welcome.
You are most welcome. You are welcome. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. I will give the floor to my co-host, Majok Makur, to welcome Engineer Hazim Khaled as well, and all our viewers, and we will start with our program at this juncture. I yield microphone to you, Mr. Majok.
Thank you so much, President Isaac Tiampol, Lake State Media. To our viewers, thank you so much for joining us. Wherever you are tuning in, kindly share this live show on your Facebook platform so that many South Sudanese or other nationals will get to listen to the voices of reasoning from Professor Taj and Engineer Alzin Kali. They will discuss and actually give their thoughts in regard to the summit which was held in Egypt, and Egypt being the host. They will discuss on that, and basically the topic of our discussions is the war in Sudan. How will the war in Sudan will end? And we will begin with Professor Taj. And to many of you, you have listened to the backgrounds and biography of Professor Taj. He is a good friend of South Sudan, and he is actually has been so much.
Yeah, before Professor Taj answer your question, I would like Engineer Bashmandis Hazim Al Khaled to introduce himself also to our viewers, and then you ask the question.
Exactly. We'll give each one of them like 2 minutes for opening remark while they will introduce themselves or the names. Thereafter, we'll dive into our conversation. And keep tuning in, sharing the live show, like it, and follow us as Lake State Media. And remember, it will not take long. Our questions are short and brief, and our guests have knowledge. Anything happening in Sudan or South Sudan or in the regions, they have knowledge about those, so they will not waste much of time. Thank you so much. Up to this juncture, allowed me to invite Engineer Alzin Kali to give us his opening remark. Then we go to Professor Taj. Engineer, the chance is yours. Unmute yourself.
You are muted. You are muted, يا باشمهندس.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. لكم التحية الإعزاز والتقدير والاحترام في ستيت ليك ميديا. مرحبا بروفيسور التاج، وتحية للشعب السوداني الصابر المظلوم، تحية لشهدائنا الكرام. معكم إن شاء الله على الشو. لكم التحية والإعزاز. تفضل.
ألف شكر يا باشمهندس. كيف أحوالك؟ إن شاء الله عافية.
شكرا جزيلا.
الحمد لله رب العالمين.
شكرا جزيلا باشمهندس. الفضل في ليك ستيت ميديا.
Yeah, we move to Professor Taj. Give us your opening remark. Thereafter, we go to the questions.
Sure. Well, I have been engaged in issues of the Horn of Africa, the greater Horn of Africa, for about 50 years now, 50. And my first engagement with South Sudan was in May 1972 in Wau, when Dr. John Garang was stationed in Busari, just south of Wau. And my relationship with his family goes that far. I must have spent 20 years of my life on the ground in South Sudan. I surveyed, designed, and implemented about 80 Hafirs in South Sudan. And a lot of my friends come from there. And while there are borders and while there is over 98% consensus from the South Sudanese to separate, it is very difficult not to consider the interdependencies between the two countries. The porous borders between the two countries, the common tribes who are split between the two borders. So when we talk about South Sudan and the calamities and the crises, not just one crisis with an IS, but crises with an ES because there are multiple. Such programs are enlightening. They need to be evidence-based. They need to be truthful. They need to be analytical so that they are useful to your audience. And thank you very much for hosting me for another time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Taj Al-Kazin, for your remark. And Ben Mandis, thank you so much for your remark too. And welcome. We need to share more. I remember last time you talked here is the time when you were actually trying to airlift some of humanitarian assistance to the people in Khartoum. And you were too emotional to the extent you even shed tears on that day. We remember it very well. And today we are trying to analyze the summit that is happening in Egypt, or which was actually hosted in Egypt, and how will it really impact the people of Sudan to end the war, and how will the international community also will help. And as one of the people who are always actually looking at international community and calling them to intervene in the peace talk in Sudan, you know much about this, and you'll also give chance to brief your fellow Sudanese and your fellow Africans on how you people here in Western world is still pursuing what you have been doing since the beginning of the war. Thank you so much, Professor Taj. You stated it very clearly that you have been engaging in the issues, being politically, being environmental, for the last 50 years in the Horn of Africa. And you know in and out of those regions or of that region. The first questions, Professor Taj, is Egypt really host the whole regions or the regional leaders summit, of which many presidents in the region attended it? And the purpose of that summit was how to rescue Sudan from an unprecedented crisis caused by the two generals or the two leaders in Sudan. And Sudan has never been the same since 2019 rather. Since 2019, Sudan has never been the same. It's crisis after crisis, crisis after crisis. But what is happening now has never been witnessed in the history of Sudan, in the capital of Khartoum. Can you brief us, Professor Taj? Will Egypt really help to end the war in Sudan? Thank you.
Right. Well, this is for your viewers. This is a website. Later on, you can have a shot of it. This website contains 23 YouTubes. The 23 YouTubes are a summary and a record and archives of the background of what is happening. They are all analytical, they are all scientific, they are all evidence based. There is no rhetoric, there is no party politics. So, quite a bit of work has been done in that area. And let me go straight into Egypt. Egypt never claimed in their advocacy, they never claimed that they are in it to solve the problems of Sudan. This is the final communique that came out of the meeting in Egypt. The first page, the first 6 points are actually wishes, confirming this, confirming that. But the crux of the meeting, the last points, the ones that are highlighted in yellow now, and it is emphasizing the pressing need for a political solution. The leaders called for an exclusive and comprehensive national dialogue between the Sudanese people. That's point 7. Point 8, agreeing to form a ministerial mechanism comprised of the ministers of this and that to develop an action plan that includes practical steps towards stopping the fighting. So the call of Egypt was never for the resolution of the conflict. It was very clearly, and as came out in the final communique, it is a starting point for having mechanisms and bringing the 7 countries around Sudan to help. And this is actually led by Shukri Sameh. Shukri Sameh is the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Egypt. He's a career diplomat. He spent most of his political life in international organizations. This is why he's not contained just within Egypt or Northern Africa. I mean, he's an international expert on that. And what I find valuable in the Egyptian, it is not an initiative. An initiative has got to have a plan, and this is what they want. They never said that this was a meeting for the resolution of the conflict. They never said that this is for their intervention. This was a call for the 7 countries neighboring Sudan to come to Cairo and to discuss, to brainstorm, to see what can be done. That's in a nutshell. So we should not take it out of context. We should not assume that it contains more than what the Egyptians intended. Egypt is 110 million people, 107 million people. They have a gross domestic product of $365 billion per year. They're one of the largest gross domestic product in Africa. So they are a power that cannot be ignored, other than the historical ties between Sudan and Egypt. So I suggest that we all put the initiative in context. I suggest that we don't expand it beyond what the Egyptians meant. And nothing is going to happen until the first ministerial meeting is held in Chad, in N'Djamena. And even the date for that meeting has not been decided. So the whole initiative is really at infancy. It is at the very first steps. They don't even have a plan, but they want to have a plan. And that's the difference between them and the IGAD. They are modest. They know what it takes. And they want to start by having a plan, which I call a process. If you go back to the CPA, we were working on the Declaration of Principles, just the 6 points of the Declaration of Principles from 1994 until 1998. For 4 years, we were just working on what they are going to talk about. So there is no quick fix. And then the discussion of the CPA went on from 1998 until 2005. So this is a long haul, it is a long process, and the Egyptians are on the right track. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Taj, for your remark and also answering the questions in details on what the intentions of Egypt is, and good enough that you have read the resolutions of the summit, and that is great. I remember, Professor Taj, the summit was conducted based on the regions, and the two warring parties were not invited. And once you want to mediate any problems between the two parties, and you are the third party, you want to be on the neutral ground, you always invite two people to come and join you in order to listen to what you and other people that you invited from what you will say. And thereafter, these two warring parties were not invited, according to the knowledge that Lagos State Media has. Now our question is, what will this resolution achieve if the two warring parties were not invited to listen to the voices of the leaders across the region and the call for peace, calm, and understanding within Sudan government? Thank you, Prof.
Right. As I mentioned my joke, let us go back to the drawing board and let us reread and reanalyze what is the objective, what is the primary objective of the Egyptians. The Egyptians never said that the Cairo meeting was for even the first step of the resolution of the conflict. And they never said that the gathering was to look into solutions. And they never said that they will or will not invite the two parties. All they said is that there are 7 countries neighboring Sudan. There is a fallout. There are negative effects on all these countries, one way or the other. That they are the ones who would live with the fallout of the conflict and the exodus of massive immigration into their countries. And Egypt called on these countries for consultations, joint consultations. So if you want to analyze an outcome, you need to first be aware of and analyze what was the call that brought that outcome. The call was never on conflict resolution. The call was never on resolving the conflict. It was never on mediation. It was only to bring the 7 countries together so that they deliberate, so that they analyze, so that they put out their views, and to see what is to be done. That, in a nutshell, that was the call and that was the objective. So there was no place for the two parties at all. There was no place for other countries that were trying to hang on this file, like Uganda and Kenya. They were not invited. They could not have been invited because they are not neighboring countries. So really, the call of Egypt was very professional, was very well defined, and we should not read between the lines of that call. What I give them credit for is that they managed to bring adversaries. If you take uh, 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 Isaias Afwerki and Abi Ahmed Ali, now the relationship is very tense with them. Although Eritrea helped Abiy Ahmed with the uh, revolt in Tigray, but now Ethiopia is deporting Eritreans in hundreds, just grabbing them literally from the streets and deporting them. And Isaias Afwerki is not happy with that, and he is not listening. They have asked Ethiopia to stop, it did not. So the fact that Egypt, with its might, political might, population might, diplomacy might, they managed to bring these people together. And if you look at what Isaias Afwerki has, I mean, his talk was great, and he had a one-on-one meeting with President Salva Kiir, which was a very important meeting. So what came out from the Cairo meeting on the sides, to me, was more substantive than the main call itself. Now we are hoping that President Kiir will work with people like Isaias Afwerki rather than with people like President Ruto, who want to send in forces and who want to command and who want to put conditions and so on. So just to conclude on this question, the Egyptians were very careful in their choice. It was not a meeting to resolve the conflict or even talk about how to resolve it, but about how the seven neighboring countries can actually position themselves to help Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Taj Al-Kazin, for giving us that insightful answering and also defining the intentions of Egyptian government to call for the bordering nations to Sudan to discuss what should be their response due to the crisis Sudan inflicted upon the neighboring state, be it economically, be it politically, be it security-wise. Thank you for that. In case, Professor, the follow-up to that questions, you mentioned that President Kiir had a meeting with the leadership in Egypt. Could this, Professor, be another way of persuading President Kiir to allow what we discussed some months ago, and especially the last year, the issue of Nile water? Or what do you think about that? Don't you think Egypt is wanting to make people convince them that they actually care for Sudan, South Sudan, and other countries? And once Egypt persuades these countries, then these countries will stand by Egypt, and then Egypt can do away with their intention. Thank you, Prof.
I don't believe that there were ulterior motives. I don't believe that there was more than what meets the eye. The only area that I was aware of on the issue of the Nile waters was the meeting between President Sisi and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. And it was purely on the GERD, the Grand Renaissance Dam of Ethiopia. And what is interesting in their communique after they met is that they said they are going to have a meeting that includes Sudan. It could not be ignored. And I think that was the influence of Egypt, because Abiy Ahmed made a grievous diplomatic mistake, a very bad glitch, when he suggested that there should be a no-fly zone around Khartoum, which would have completely disabled the South from dealing with the RSF. So I don't think that there was an ulterior motive. However, as you know, the Egyptians have got an office of the Ministry of Water and Irrigation in each of the 10 states of South Sudan, and they have a sign. In each of the 10 states, they have an office of the Egyptian Ministry in South Sudan. As well as we speak now, the machinery in Bantiu has been assembled, and I hope that the dredging of River Naam does not go through because there were no studies that were done. My recommendations, my team's recommendation to the president is that there have got to be studies before any dredging. The president accepted that. Barnaba Marial took it to the Council of Ministers. He presented the report. The Council of Ministers decreed that there have got to be studies first before any dredging. So, where does this situation lie? Does the government of South Sudan, are they going to go against the Council of Ministers decisions? Is Egypt playing a game? If they are playing a game, this is not the field. I don't think that they were playing a game with South Sudan. I got reports from insiders that there was complete freedom for President Kiir, that no other issues were discussed, and that he was free to deliver what he wanted and to meet with whom he wants. This is why he met one-on-one with President Isaias Afwerki. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Taj, for that. Actually, we all know, and we will We will leave it aside for now because we are dealing with the issues of Sudan crisis and how Sudan crisis will be rescued. But the issue of Nile water sometimes remain to be a serious issue between Egypt and the countries along the Nile. Egypt can do anything to persuade any country that seem to be resistant to or seem to block their interest. We move to the next question, Professor Taj, before we come to Mandis Khalif. If Professor, if we are told now the regional leadership may decide to deploy the regional forces in Sudan to provide protection to civilians and to the properties of that country, do you think these regional deployment forces will help Sudan people, especially civilians? And how will the two warring parties perceive this if it happens? Thank you, Prof.
Right. This is where the issue of deployment is coming from. This is the protocol relating to the establishment of the Peace and Security Council of the African Union. That's the starting point. And this is where Musa Faki is. This is the domain of Musa Faki. And this is the policy framework for the establishment of the African Standby Force. That's the core. 49 pages. Anybody who is dealing with this issue will need to read these 49 pages. Very well detailed. And these 11 pages, this is the agreement of the establishment of the East African Standby Force, ESAF. So this is what it is. And there are members who are not from the Horn of Africa. All those are members. And Sudan has signed on it, and that is the signature of Sudan. Is part of ESAF. Why they signed on such an agreement baffles me. There was absolutely no reason for that. However, this issue has now been uh, uh, cooled down. SAF in Sudan were very clear that any forces that attempt to come into Sudan, they will consider them an invading force, which means they are going to fight them. So they backed out, and a couple of days back, President Ruto made a phone call to Burhan. They talked over the phone. Why Burhan talked to him, I really don't know. If I were in the place of Burhan, if I meet Ruto in the street, I will not raise my hand to him. So this is not going to happen. And this was one of the main outcomes of the Cairo meeting, that there shall be no intervention. Not only that, you need to read what the United States said. The United States came out very strongly, and one of the deputies of Blinken said that there shall be no intervention of any forces, regional or international, in Sudan. So this issue has all been thrown in the dump and with the garbage where it really belongs. And this was an invention of President Ruto, because the headquarters of the military of ISAF is actually in Nairobi. However, one of the senior commanders is actually a Sudanese brigadier general. Regrettably, there was a call. The ISAF is not part of IGAD. They have got nothing to do with the IGAD. This is why the IGAD, in their recommendations, they said to assemble the summit of the ISAF. They did not say, let us get the ISAF. They made a call to assemble the summit, because they know they have no authority over the ISAF. And the ISAF is one of the legs of the African Union and not of the IGAD. So a mix-up happened there. It has been corrected. No forces will be coming into Sudan. If they do, they will be considered an enemy and they will be fought the same way that Hemeti is being fought now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Taj, for the answering that question. Then I have to go straight to Bash Mahandis, Engineer Hazim Khalid, Mashkura Gidan, for being patient. And this all I like one question will go to you before I get back to Khalid. I mean, to Professor Taj later. So the question is, as we know, since the crisis is started in Sudan, Egypt is presumed as one who has participated in it, and now is the one hosting the peace or the initiative. How can Egypt be a host for peace in Sudan while Egypt has been accused of taking part in Sudan conflict? Can you elaborate more about that?
طيب شكرا جزيلا لكم. شكرا for State Media. Thank you, Professor Taj, for good analysis. I enjoyed your point of view from the sources. But let me be clear in one few things here. I want to pinpoint few things, and I would like to speak in Arabic so it reached my people widely. أولا الصراع الموجود في السودان الآن نحن كسودانيين، أنا كرئيس الجمعية الكفاءات السودانية بالخارج خطنا واضح، وبنطالب العالم كله، سواء كان العالم الأفريقي، سواء كان العالم العربي، سواء كان الدول دول الترويكيا، سواء كانت اليونايتد نيشنز، سواء كانت كل هذه الدول. أولا التساوي ما بين الميليشيا المتمردة، ونحن نسميها ميليشيا متمردة، ما بنسميهم تو باريز، ميليشيا متمردة على المؤسسة العسكرية التي تمثل الشعب السوداني. يعني الحرب دي هي ميليشيا متمردة، والعالم بيدي هذه الميليشيا أكثر من حقها. هي ميليشيا متمردة في البداية. فخلينا let us pinpoint the truth here. خلينا نخط الحقيقة واضحة. الحقيقة واضحة إنه هذه الميليشيا متمردة على السلطة السودانية، دي الحكومة السودانية ممثلة في المجلس العسكري، ممثلة في قواتنا المسلحة، ممثلة في إرادة الشعب السوداني. فهي ليس لها وجود أساسا. نعم تكونت داخل المنظومة العسكرية، تمردت على المنظومة العسكرية بشكليات محددة، وكلنا نعرف الأسباب، وكلنا نعرف الدول التي تدعم هذه الميليشيا المتمردة اللي استخدموها الروس في سرقة ونهب موارد السودان، اللي استخدموها الإمارات والسعودية في الحرب في اليمن، فهي ميليشيا متمردة، ميليشيا مرتزقة، ميليشيا تعمل ضد الشعب السوداني، يقتلوا وينهبوا، يقتلوا يقتلوا المدنيين، هم الذين يقتلوا المدنيين، هم الذين ينهبوا ويغتصبوا ويفعلوا ما يفعلوا، والعالم واقف مكتوف الأيدي من ذلك. العالم واقف مكتوف الأيدي من ذلك. ده نمرة واحد. نمرة اثنين، الحل سوداني. نرفض كل التدخل الأجنبي، نرفض التدخل العربي، نرفض التدخل الأفريقي، نرفض التدخل الدولي، نرفض التدخل لأي شيء، بأسباب موضوعية وبأسباب حقيقية موضوعة أمام الطاولة. العالم كله turning blind eye to it، الناس كلها عاملة فيها. نبدأ في الحتة دي من أول نقطة. عندما تم الصراع أو تمت الميليشيا، تمردت هذه الميليشيا في أول اجتماع لمجلس الأمن، اللي هو مجلس الأمن لما يعمل اجتماع عشان يقرر عن المشكلة السودانية. السودان كأحد الدول الموجودة ضمن هذه المنظمة العالمية وهيئة الأمم المتحدة، كان قرار مجلس الأمن شنو؟ كان قرار مجلس الأمن للمساعدات الإنسانية شنو؟ وين المساعدات الإنسانية؟ لأنه حدد المشكلة مشكلة داخلية، مشكلة صراع داخلي، صراع سوداني، صراع داخلي. كانت روسيا ترأس هذا الاجتماع آنذاك، فبالتالي المشكلة سودانية ومعالجتها سودانية وحلها سوداني. وحتى الآن ما شفنا أحد الدول قدمت مساعدات إنسانية للسودان، إنما عملوا إجلاء للدبلوماسيين حقهم فقط. ليش ما نفس الطائرات اللي عملوا بها إجلاءات للدبلوماسيين؟ ليش ما قدموا بها المساعدات الإنسانية؟ ليش ما قدموا مساعدات إنسانية للسودان؟ ليش ما في مساعدات إنسانية؟ ليش ما في مساعدة إنسانية كحق سودانية؟ حتى الدول الجوار السبعة الآن التي تدعي إنها عايزة دارت تحل المشاكل في السودان، that's all bullshit. ليه؟ لانه نحن كسودانيين السودان فتح مساره يعني في 67 السودان فتح لمصر حتى القاعده العسكريه لاستخدامه، فتح للاثيوبيين دارنا، استقبلنا كل الاثيوبيين، استقبلنا كل الاريتريين، استقبلنا كل الليبيين، استقبلنا كل التشاديين في اثناء ظروفهم اللي مروا بها. اين ذلك نحن؟ الان قفلوا معابرهم في وجه اللاجئين السودانيين، قفلوا معابرهم في الناس الموجودين على المعابر، النساء والاطفال قفلوا المعابر منهم. اين المساعده الانسانيه؟ وحتى الناس اللي دخلوا الى هذه الدول موجودين سواء كان السودانيين مستفيده منهم الدول دي، لانه في معظم السودانيين اللي قدروا يستطيعوا يخشوا الى بعض الدول اهلهم بيرسلوا لهم من خارج السودان، فده is a lot of money pumping into those economic. والسودان كدوله فيها 200 مليون فدان صالح للزراعه، اكبر دوله مصنعه على الصعيد العربي، عندنا 150 مليون من اليورانيوم، 150 مليون طن من اليورانيوم، عندنا من المعادن، عندنا من الذهب، عندنا 12 نهر في السودان. دوله السودان كدوله يعني هناك سياسات خبيثه ضد السودان، هنالك مشاكل تحاق ضد البلد في السودان. ليه؟ لان دي كلها مصالحهم. اذا الرئيس الكيني يجي يستضيف ويعمل القمه بتاعت الافريقيا، نسال سؤال منطقي. في 2019 لما قامت هذه الثوره السلميه، ثوره الشباب السلميه، وغيرت نظام الدكتاتور، ماذا حدث؟ هل الايجاد كانت موقعه؟ هل الاتحاد الافريقي كان موقع؟ هل جامعه الدول العربيه ما شهدوا ذلك؟ حتى عندما تم التحول بتاع البرهان على المدنيه وتم رفض تسليم السلطه للمدنيين، اين ذلك العالم كان؟ اين ذلك العالم؟ ولكن الان نحن نقف بصلابه خلف قواتنا المسلحه، لانها هي رمزيه دولتنا، لانها هي رئاسه السودان، لانها هي سياده السودان، ونطالب العالم. نحن طالبنا العالم من كل المنابر، سواء كان من منابر الثوريه، سواء كان من منابر تجمع الكفاءات السودانيين بالخارج، سواء كان الشعب السوداني ارادته. الان المشكله مشكله سودانيه وحلها حل سوداني. القمه الافريقيه اللي اجتمعوا في اريتريا لا مصالحها الخاصه، ليس مصالحها الخاصه، لانهم متاثرين، لانه الاستقرار في السودان يعني استقرار هذه الدول، عدم الاستقرار في السودان يعني عدم استقرار تلك الدول. نمره واحد. نمره اثنين، الشيء المهم جدا جدا، القمه المصريه نحن نامل فيها كنا الاتي من دول الجوار، كنا نامل فيها الاتي: ايقاف دعوة صريحة لإيقاف الدعم للميليشيا المتمردة، ونحن نصر على تسمية الميليشيا المتمردة التي تقتل النساء والأطفال وتنهب داخل هذا الوطن، وقواتنا المسلحة قادرة تماما على دحر هذه القوات المسلحة. يبقى نحن لم نسمي حاجة اسمها طرفين، نحن ما بنسمي إنه طرفين للنزاع، إننا بنسمي دي ميليشيا متمردة ضد الدولة السودانية، يجب القضاء عليها، مرتزقة يجب القضاء عليها. نتوقع من الدول الموجودة او القمه بتاعت مصر او القمه الاخرى او القمم التي تعقد لاحقا عقدت سابقا وتعقد لاحقا، ان مطالبتنا لها واحده: ان تقف موقف الحياد وتقف تعلن انه هذه الميليشيا ميليشيا متمرده لا وجود لها في داخل الدوله السودانيه، هذه ميليشيا متمرده ليس لها وجود داخل الدوله السودانيه. ومن هنا نحن بنقول انه الحل لهذه المشكله مش حل سوداني مباشر بضحض هذه القوات، بطردها خارج البلاد، واعاده السلطه المدنيه. فدي من النقاط الاساسيه، اللي احنا بنطالب بها. يبقى الدول دي كلها مجتمعه لمصالحها، بطريقه مباشره، مصالحها الاساسيه، سواء كانت مصالح مباشره، سواء كانت مصالح خفيه، سواء كانت مصالح شخصيه، سواء كانت مصالح سياسيه، سواء كانت مصالح صد النهضه، سواء كانت مصالح لاتفاقيات مياه النيل، سواء كانت مصالح للموارد السودانيه من الصمغ العربي، من الذهب، من اليورانيوم، الى ما شابه ذلك. فيبقى الصراع واضح يا جماعه بنقاط محدده، والكلام معروف بحته محدده بانه هذه الدول زي ما قال بروفيسور تاج ما عندها it's not they didn't call to solve the issue in Sudan, they called to think about their own impact. يعني دارين يعرفوا التاثير عليهم، لانه اقتصادياتهم اتاثرت. يعني وجود السودان، عدم استقرار السودان يعني عدم استقرار جنوب السودان، عدم استقرار مصر، عدم استقرار اثيوبيا، عدم استقرار تشاد، عدم استقرار كل دول الجوار للسودان. فيبقى هنا المطالبه انهم اول حاجه الخطوه المطالبه هذه الدول ان تغيف موقف مع الدوله السودانيه، وتمنع التدخل وتمنع الامدادات اللي بتتم لهذه الميليشيا المتمرده. عايزين منهم بيان صريح واضح، دعما لقوات الشعب السوداني، دعما للسودان، دعما لقواته المسلحه، نبذ وشج هذه الميليشيا المتمرده التي تغتصب النساء والاطفال. ونطالب منهم ايضا الاحترام الاحترام بالنسبه للسودانيين الموجودين على المعابر، يفتحوا معابرهم، يتعاملوا مع السودانيين بكرامه وبعزه وباحترام، خاصه النساء والاطفال منهم. فيبقى نحن هنا عشان نتحدث عن الحل الموجود من الدول، دول الجوار ابدا، دول الجوار لا تملك حل، ولا الايجاد تملك حل، ولا الدول الغربيه تملك حل، ولا دول الترويكا تملك حل، ولا امريكا تملك حل، ولا غيرهم من المنظمات تملك حل. الحل واحد هو دحض الميليشيا المتمرده بواسطه القوات السودانيه المسلحه. ومن هنا بيبدا التحول، ودي هنا محنه الشعب السوداني الان في محنه، والحكومه السودانيه الان في محنه، ولكن لن تطول كثيرا، وسوف نتمكن من دحر هذه الميليشيا. والان تم ذلك، يتم دحر هذه الميليشيا دحرا كامل، ويعيد السودان سيطرته، ويعيد السودان تعيد القوات المسلحه سيطرتها على البلاد. ومن هنا حنبني بلدنا بطريقتنا المختلفه. وزي ما طرحنا في تجمع الكفاءات السودانيه، وزي ما طرحنا في انه قياده هذه الثوره تتحول لقيادات شبابيه ممثله في الميثاق الثوري لتاسيس سلطه الشعب، اللي هو الثوره السلميه اللي قام بها هؤلاء الشباب. وقدمنا ورقه نحن في تجمع الكفاءات السودانيه لمجلس الامن، وقدمنا ورقه لمكتب الامين العام نطالب فيه انه هذه المشكله مشكله سودانيه. الناس اذا عايزه تساعد السودان، سواء كانت دول الجوار، سواء كانت دول الترويكا، سواء كانت كل هذه الدول، يفتحوا المساعدات الانسانيه زي ما قدروا طلعوا دبلوماسيينهم بالطيارات. ليش ما يستخدموا نفس الطيارات لإسقاط المساعدات الانسانيه والمساعدات الطبيه؟ ونحن كدوله فتحنا ابوابنا لمصالحهم، حتى السوريين فتحنا لهم ابوابنا، العرب كلهم فتحنا لهم ابوابنا، ولكن المصالحهم سواء كانت الامارات، سواء كانت السعوديه، سواء كانت مصر، سواء كانت اثيوبيا، سواء كانت تشاد، سواء كانت كل الدول دي تعلم تماما. ونحن عند دحض هذه الميليشيا المتمرده، وانا اركز واكرر انه نحن نطالب دول الجوار بعدم الاحتراف بهذه الميليشيا المتمرده، والوقوف حتى لو معنويا جانب قوات الشعب المسلح السودانيه، لانه دي رمزيه الدوله السودانيه، دي الرمزيه الاساسيه بالدوله السودانيه. فالايجاد الايجاد عملت لنا شنو؟ الايجاد من 2003 الى ذلك اليوم 2011 فصلت السودان الى دولتين ساويه النص. نعم قد كان بالاستفتاء ولكن كانت الدور الاساسي هناك. يبقى هنا كرساله اخيره نحن من هذا المنبر بنوجهها لكل الدول الجوار، بنوجهها لدول الترويكا، بنوجهها لامريكا، بنوجهها لكل الدول الحاجبه، لانه استقرار السودان، الصراع الداخلي السائد ما بين امريكا والولايات المتحده وروسيا على القرن الافريقي، وخاصه السودان كموقع استراتيجي. ونحن حنرجع في يوم من الايام بمواردنا، بمقدرتنا، بعقولنا، بنقدر نكفي السودان ده، ونعمل حتى اسطولنا البحري على البحر الاحمر، ونقدر نسيطر على هذه المنطقه، لانه عندنا من الموارد ما يكفي، عندنا من المياه ما يكفي، عندنا من الاراضي الزراعيه ما يكفي، عندنا من المعادن ما يكفي. فيبقى اذا المساله هي كلها مساله بتاعت مصالح، كل دوله تلعب على مصالحها، كل دوله تلعب على حاجات الذاتيه اللي هي محتاجه لها اساسا. اما التدخل العسكري داخل السودان، سواء كان بقوات سلام، سواء كان تحت البند السابع، هذا مرفوض رفضا باتا ومرفوض رفضا تاما. ونحن نطالب كل العالم بانه يخط هذه النقاط على
السيد المهندس. طبعا انت جاوبت بعض السؤالات اللي كان عايز نسالك به، لكن I need to ask you this question because we have seen the regional or the bordering countries bordering Sudan, all of them into asasiya benum. There are a lot of accusations between the government or the borders that like Ethiopia and Eritrea, Egypt, Libya in the other area, Chad, South Sudan also is involved. There are accusations here. Do you think these regional leaders, those who have just formed themselves, they need to bring peace to Sudan? Do you think they can make it?
No. They don't have the right, and they don't have the ability, and they don't have the capability to do anything. All they're looking for is their own gains. Like Egypt has its own problem. When we shut down the northern side, they suffer economically. And Ethiopia has its own problem. Want support for the dam. Egypt has the same problem. South Sudan flow his petroleum. Hemeti was threatening to kill the pipelines. So everybody is looking for his own agenda. Everybody is looking for his own things. Here, what we are asking for, what we are asking this neighboring country to be, deal with us as a sovereign country, no intervention. We don't need that. We need you to accept the reality. وطالبينكم بأنكم يطلعوا تصاريحهم العالية بأنه هذه الميليشيا متمردة، عايزين الدعم المباشر الدعم المباشر للقوات الشعب السودانيه المسلحه، لانها هي رمز الدوله السودانيه وهي سياده الوطن. دي نمره واحد. نمره اثنين، عايزين منهم يحترموا السودانيين الموجودين على المعابر. عدم الذله للاطفال والنساء كحق اساسي، كحق انساني، بغض النظر عن دول الجوار. هذا المطالبه الحقيقيه. وتعود الدوله السودانيه غريبا بعد ضحض هذه الميليشيا، ونحدد علاقاتنا مع كل هذه الدول على حسب مصالحنا الذاتيه وعلى حسب المصالح بتاعت السودان. فده باختصار شديد يعني.
اوكي. يب. شكرا جزيلا. اوكي. السؤال الاخير كمان عليك باش مهندس قبل نرجع للبروفيسور تاج. I need to ask you this question because we have been hearing the reports like the mass grave which has been discovered recently between the border of the Chad and Sudan, and the accusation they laid hand to RF, Rapid Support Forces. Do you think is Rapid Support Forces committing human rights violation by killing civilians, or both sides, the government, are responsible of human tragedy in the country of Sudan?
The Rapid Force نحن بنسميها I'm insisting in calling them الميليشيا المتمردة. That's number one. وهم مجرمين حرب ومرتزقة وليس بسودانيين، هم مرتزقة وهم ارتكبوا جرائم حرب معروفة من 2003 في دارفور. أخيرا حتى بعد الثورة السودانية في جبل مون، حرقوا جبل مون، حرقوا بيضة، حرقوا مناطق كثيرة جدا جدا في دارفور، وما زالوا يحرقون يعني، وما زالوا حتى داخل الخرطوم يغتصبون النساء ويقتلون الأطفال، وقاعدين داخل المنازل. تغيير للشعب السوداني وللناس الموجوده. وين الدعم السريع الان موجود في الخرطوم؟ داخل المنازل. والا القوات المسلحه كان بحرضهم في 3 ايام، لكن هم يختبوا داخل المنازل ويغتصبوا الاطفال والنساء والرجال ويقتلوا. هذه ميليشيا متمرده مجرمه يجب ضحضها. وده نحن العالم ده كله شايف الكلام ده، شايفين all the reports are there, the reality is there, people are watching. فنحن ليش حنطفي الراس بالرمله؟ وليش نيجي نساوي هذه الميليشيا نسميهم تو كونفليكت بارتي، يعني كونفليكت مع نخط القوات المسلحه، قواتنا المسلحه القصاد، هذه الميليشيا المتمرده. واي؟ فالعالم هنا يحدد. اول حاجه الناس تحدد موقف العالم. we're asking the world to determine their position. they supposed to support the sovereignty of Sudan. القوات المسلحه للشعب السوداني دي هي الاساسيه الرمزيه لهذه الدوله. يبقى ما تبقى ما عندنا في اي حديث، ولا نستعد نقعد معهم في اي حوار، ولا مستعدين نسمح لهم بالتدخل. انما قواتنا المسلحه قادره نضع هذه الميليشيا ونعيد بناء السودان ده ونحول الى دوله مدنيه، حتى وان كانت لدينا بعض الخلافات مع المجلس العسكري الحالي كثوره شبابيه قامت في هذه الدوله. لنا خلافاتنا مع المجلس بتاع البرهان والغربيين، لكن الان نحن ندعم هذا المجلس وندعم القوات المسلحه. بعد ما ان يتم ضحض هذه الميليشيا المتمرده نعيد اعاده هيئه الاركان لاستلام هذه الدوله، والمضي قدما بتكوين بناء هذه الدوله من الحطام على اسس الميثاق الثوري لتاسيس سلطه الشعب. وطرحناه ومطروح، موجوده على في اليونايتد نيشن، موجوده على مجلس الامن، موجوده على كل الدول. معروف ثوره شبابيه، قيادات شبابيه، حكومه مدنيه كامله الدسم، اصلا ما فيها. لكن الان الوضع يختلف. الان وضعنا انه ضحض هذه الميليشيا التي تقتل النساء والاطفال. فيبقى لما تجتمع لي الدول الجوار للسودان، لانها هي متاثره اقتصاديا ولانها متاثره بالريفريجي among the people fleeing to their countries. Although some of it is very beneficial for them because it bumps some hard currency to their countries. Most of these refugees that have the ability to leave the country because they have somebody else outside the country, so they fund them to live there. This is one point people are not looking at. The second point is we need them to open, at least for women and children, open the boundaries. We did open hours for years and years and years, and support all humanity, all humanitarian ground. We did everything we could. But so it is clear, it's obvious. So why are we discussing the obvious here?
شكرا جزيلا مهندس حزيم الخالد. Thank you. Professor Taj, before you just weigh in, if you want to elaborate more or answer some of the question that Bash Mahandis has answered, I have one question that I need to raise to you, and then you will just go back to adding things. Taban, we know in South Sudan is one of the also country which is accused. There is a fear that the rapid support forces may disrupt the oil flow if their demands are not addressed in time. Rapid support forces are threatening and demanding South Sudan government to stop funding the Sovereign Council military leadership, who is their enemy that they are fighting with, or the sheer source, uh, or they will shut down the oil. What is your wisdom here on this issue, this very critical time for the two countries and within the country of Sudan?
Thank you for this strategic question. And these really are the type of questions that will take us forward, will enlighten our audience, and maybe throw some light on the size, nature, and dimensions of the fallout of the conflict. Let us go into some basic analysis. The producers of the oil on behalf of the government of Sudan are the Greater Pioneer Operating Company, GPOC, Dar Petroleum Operating Company, Sud Petroleum Operating Company, and they are producing 170,000 barrels per day of oil. And they give Sudan a royalty for passage of that oil of about $10 per barrel, or about US dollars 500,000 to 600,000 to $600 million per year. It is not a very big portion, but it is not a joke. Then what happens? These companies that produce the oil are not actually the exporters. The exporters are Sahara Energy, Trafigura, Vitol, BP Energy, and a couple of other companies who actually get the oil and market it. Okay, how is this oil exported? It comes from the different fields and it collects in Hijlik, where the valves are. The valves of passing the oil from South Sudan into the pipeline to Bashir in the Red Sea. Hijlik has got these valves. Regrettably, Hijlik now is in the hands of the RSF. They just attacked it and they took it over. But it is not Hijlik that is exporting the oil. It is Bashir, which is under the control of the government in Khartoum. So if the valves are closed in the Red Sea, there is no export. Where does this oil go? When it is exported, where does it go? 100% goes to China. All of the export of South Sudan of oil goes to China. The other delicate issue is that 98% of the revenue of the government of South Sudan comes from oil. So if the valves are shut, if there is no export of oil of 170 barrels, 1,000 barrels per day, we go hungry in South Sudan. We go naked. We die. The government collapses. So it is a critical issue. And this is really the main game ball that President Salva Kiir, Tudgat Ruak, Bernabo Marial, and the rest of the team, they have got to be watching. What could happen to us in South Sudan if the valves are shut? If it is in Higlig or if it is in the Red Sea. Out of 18 states in Sudan, there are 15 states that have got no rebellion. The RSF do not exist. They are only in 3 states, sometimes going through to another one, but generally they are only operating in 3 states: Western Darfur, parts of Kordofan, and Khartoum. Where else are they? The people who actually left Khartoum, most of them did not go to the neighboring countries. Most of them went to these other states. They went to Jazeera, they went to the northern province, they went to Kassala, they went to Gadarif, where the RSF does not exist at all, not one soldier. But really, my main concern in this area is with the South Sudanese people. And our government in Juba has got to to play their cards right, have got to do proper political analysis. Who are the enemies in this area? Where we should be careful? If I were the government of South Sudan and the RSF threatens to control, to shut the valves in Higli, the SPLA should associate with the Sudanese army and attack the RSF in Higli and free Higli so that the oil passes. That's how as far as they can go. At one point, Burhan and his team were extremely angry with South Sudan because through some uh, diplomatic glitch, miscalculation, or a conspiracy, Yusuf Izzat, the advisor of Hemeti, was received as if he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs of another sovereign country. That was a very bad mistake. This is being corrected now. I am told that our good colleague Tut Gatilwak is now changing his tactics. He's aware of the dangers, and I am also told that people like Yusuf Izzat will no longer be entertained. That President Salva Kiir has actually refused to meet with the delegation that are roaming around, the group of traitors. He refused to meet them. I am still to confirm if they will or will not be allowed to come into South Sudan. Yasser Arman is working tirelessly with his old colleagues in the SPLM so that he changes the mind of the president, but the president is staying dead fast. He started to realize that if Burhan is angered, he might very well shut the valve in Bashir and no export of oil will happen. It is a remote possibility, but it is a doable possibility. The Sudanese armed forces were established in 1925. They are not a joke. They are not a joke. 225,000 strong. The sixth strongest army in all of Africa. Al Burhan, Kabashi, and Yasser Al Ata are career officers and they are graduates of one of the top military academies in Africa. Yes, they were taken by surprise. Maybe. Yes, they suffered some losses. Yeah, this is war. However, now they are the backbone. They are the spinal cord of Sudan. Without the Sudanese armed forces, we will move from a fragile state into a failed state. Sudan and South Sudan have been fragile states for the last 22 years. And according to Silier and Sisk, two of the top political analysts in the world, both Sudan and South Sudan shall remain fragile states until 2050. What is fragility? It stands on three legs. We call it ALC: authority, legitimacy, and capacity. They are all very weak or non existent in Sudan and in South Sudan. South Sudan is under sanctions. Three benchmarks. I tried my best. Francis Denk is working on that. I worked a little bit on that. And we are trying to convince the government of South Sudan that this is where you should concentrate and focus your work. Unless we remove the sanctions, and there are sanctions by the UN, sanctions by the US, sanctions by Great Britain, sanctions by Sweden, and sanctions uh, by another country. 5 countries have got sanctions, but the UN and the US, the three benchmarks, unless they are met, we're not going anywhere. The Vancouver Principle, which needs to be signed, it should have been signed by Angelina Tenney before she left. She did not sign it. Now people are going back to that. So the issue of the oil is a very complex issue. It is the lifeline for South Sudan. There is revenue for the North. There is a difference between the politics and the threat and the actual execution. I don't think that the RSF will dare to shut the valves at Higli. And this is the only area that is weak. And if I were staff and the SPLA, the Army, SSGDF, South Sudan People's Defense Forces, I will join forces and we will together threaten this rebel group that if you touch the oil, you are doomed. If you touch the oil, we are going to fight you together. Because really, there can be no economic existence or even survival for South Sudan without the oil flowing. Let me just go to another point. Engineer Abdulazim Khalid has alluded to a number of issues. There is what we call the evangelical agreement. The agreement that separated South Sudan. It was spearheaded by George W. Bush, who is actually a churchgoer. He's a devout Christian. We respect him for that. However, that was his main concern. And a colleague of mine from Carter Center, some time back when I was talking about donor fatigue, he said, Professor, it is no longer donor fatigue, it is now compassion fatigue. And compassion fatigue is what the Bashmuhandis was talking about. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Trust me. And if you look at the speed and the efficiency of the exodus of taking the people, the Euro-Caucasians out of Khartoum, it was a top top operation, and they left Sudan to its own fate. So I am not hopeful that there will be solutions from the outside. And also there are priorities. You cannot talk about government. You cannot, whenever you have conflicts, you need to deal with the conflict before you deal with the governance. And this is where Volker Perses made a very big mistake. He was working on governance rather than on conflict. But to go back to our main line and to our this very important question, we need a lot of cooperation. And let me just share with you, I sent a message to President Salva Kiir and I suggested to him not to give the file to one person, Tut Gatalwak, with all due respect to him, but to form a committee and create a Sudan desk. It is not a joke. This is not the relationship between the two countries is far bigger and beyond the capabilities of one person. If it is
Mm.
me or you or Salva Kiir, it doesn't make any difference. But it's beyond the capacity of one person. And look at the West. They have Sudan and South Sudan desk in Washington, D.C. So I hope that the president listens to this, and I hope that he forms a very strong desk to deal with issues like that and to have a strategy, an immediate term strategy, middle term strategy, and long term strategy. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Taj, for answering the question and your wise advice that you have given, prospective views that you have put in. I'm still wondering here. I have a question again to you, because in this crisis, the peace agreement was started by the IGAD, and it was taken to Saudi Arabia, and then from Saudi Arabia now the Egypt has hosted it, and there is nothing that fruitful or hopeful that can pave the way or show the ceasefire to sustain or can give people a hope that this will lead to a peaceful reconciliation or an agreement. What can international communities can do here to help Sudan to stop this crisis? Because humanitarian crisis is building up very highly, especially in the border going to Chad.
Right. To start with, let me share with you that there is no international community. This is the fallacy. This is a term that was coined by the Western countries to make themselves larger than what they are. What exists is the global north, which is Europe and North America, the global east, which is China and India, and the global south, which is Africa and Latin America. So the term itself is very misleading. And let us take Canada, for example. People are wondering why is Canada standing away and Canada is in a position to do this and do that. They are not. The imports of Sudan from Canada are about $44 million per year. Peanuts. And the imports of Canada from Sudan are $400,000. That's it. That's it. So from an economic point of view, why on earth would Canada care about Sudan? So, and if you look, all that they are giving is lip service and sanctions. The United Kingdom, the old colonizer, they are coming out with sanctions now. And they sanction the armed forces the same way they sanction the RSF as if they are equals. So I don't think that the so-called international community can come up with any solutions for Sudan. The CPA was different, and the dimension was what I call the angelical input. The Western countries were Italy, United States, United Kingdom, Sweden, France. All of them are Christian countries. The majority of the population are Christian countries. Christian values, no matter about that, with a lot of respect. I always talk about the power of one Jesus Christ, and I equate him with all the famous people in our human life. So I don't think that they care. There is compassion fatigue over
Mm.
Sudan. And people say, why isn't the international community doing the same for Sudan as they did for the Ukraine? For the
Yeah.
Ukraine was invaded with another country. These are two people within the same capital. They start
Within the
killing
same
each other
country.
in the
Yes.
morning.
Mm.
So, absolutely. So, we need to be careful in blaming the international community for not acting because they don't have any motive to do that. And they are not the conscious of the world. They are running after their interests, and there is no economic interest right now. Let me take you. You mentioned the CPA, and I mentioned that we started, and I was one of the team. I was insider as an expert, advising both parties, the SPLM, SPLA, and the government of Sudan at that time. We had a process. No one, if you put the two heads, the rebel Hemeti and the commander in chief of the armed forces, if you put them in the room, what are they going to achieve? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You need a process. There is no process so far. An initiative has got to be followed by a design process. And let me very quickly just give you what are the main elements of a process that we developed for the CPA, and that's why it succeeded. We need a ceasefire and de-escalation of hostilities, and these are two different things. De-escalation of hostilities are wider than a ceasefire. We need a declaration of principles. If they are going to meet, what are they going to talk about? It took us 4 years to agree that 1994 to 1998, Ghadi Salah ad-Din went and literally insulted Daniel Arab Moy, and he said, we don't agree to this rubbish, and he went back to Khartoum. The same Ghadi Salah ad-Din went back in 1998 and he agreed. Without a declaration of principles, without coining, if people are going to meet, suppose they are going to meet, what are they going to talk about? So talking about an initiative simply because someone said, I want to help, that's not an initiative. What are the agreed principles of the negotiations? What are the security arrangements that we need to put in place? Wealth sharing, power sharing, transitional processes, corridors of tranquility, state and the religion, right for self-determination, implementation agreements. If you go back to the CPA, you will find that it is 261 pages. 101 pages are the implementation agreement. How do we do things? And Hilda Johnson was behind us with the whip, making sure that everything is 4 months just to produce the implementation agreement. That's why it works like a clock. 1994 to 2005 to 2011. That is the length of the CPA. So how can we resolve a conflict? And the internal conflicts are different from when you have got two external, South Sudan and Sudan, the SPLA and the army. This is internal. That's more serious. It is more delicate to address, especially when we are talking about a legitimate body and an illegitimate body. So to go back, I always object to the term international community. And I don't think that there is any seriousness. I don't think that they have any goodwill. And I don't think that anything is going to come out of them. The I hope that General Burhan will stick to his first advocacy when he said from now on there shall be no armed groups in Sudan. And I talked to one of my friends in South Sudan before the Juba agreement when people were registering. 98 applications were given to South Sudan as if there are 98 rebel groups in Darfur alone. Everybody wanted a seat. Everybody puts a tie and they come with a Samsonite bag and they want to claim that they have got forces. Minni Arkomi now have got 3,000. Mohammed Noor have got 3,000. Abdulaziz Al Hilo has got between 5 to 6,000. And he's strong because he was the main gunner. He was the commander in charge of the heavy guns during the civil war. So we are talking about a total of 10, 12, maybe 15,000 maximum. Where does the power of Hemeti come from? Hemeti comes from Aulad Mansour. The sub-tribe of Hemeti are called Aulad Mansour. Aulad Mansour are part of the Mahamid, and the Mahamid are part of a Rizegat. Aulad Mansour have got two battalions, Jerusalem 1 and Jerusalem 2. Each of them is 14,000. So their total is 28,000. Hemeti attacked Khartoum with 57,000 strong. 57,000. 28,000 of them were his backbone, were Aulad Mansour. The rest were other tribes, and most of them went away. But the army in Khartoum had to fight 57,000 that embarked on the capital fully armed, and they are shattering them now. So I am not hopeful that there will be a international
International.
community type of initiative as happened before. Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Thank you very
thank you
much.
so much.
Well,
Thank you for
thank you, Isaac. I would like just to take a mic for a second to thanks Professor Taj for the courage and for the fantastic analysis. And I was very blessed by you stating the rebels and pinpoint the priority of the gospel naked truth about the world or about the issue in Sudan. I'm really blessed and to be with you on this show. Really grateful. I wasn't expecting you will pinpoint the way you did actually with a naked eye to state the actual reality that the world is turning around about it. And this is, I think, it's a very educative session for me. And I'm very blessed and glad that at least finally, from people that who analyze the situation in Sudan, someone comes out and stated the gospel naked truth without fear in the reality, is stating the impact that the international community intention is stating the reality that pinpoint the economical factor that all the neighboring country is will suffer from the conflict of Sudan by supporting and financing the rebels, the rebel support forces as a rebel, and its impact not only Sudan, it impacts South Sudan, it impacts Egypt, it impacts Chad, Eritrea, Ethiopia, and all. I'm really glad and blessed that finally I can find somebody who can pinpoint without any prejudice the state of real truth. That's what we're looking for. That is the kind of support and that is the kind of the information and the opening eyes we need people to see around the world. What is actually the conflict and what is the impact of these conflicts by them just looking under their feet and looking for their end game. But in the long term, Sudan and the African Horn, we know the fight along the years from Russia for gold, for uranium, titanium that is in Dar al-Nihas, in Darfur, in Red Sea, and at the same time, the United States
standing around, and they want to control.
Thank
They
you.
want to
You are
control
welcome.
because they don't
You are
want the
welcome. Thank you
Russian
very
to be
much.
there. Just give me a few minutes. They don't want the Russian to be there. There is one other angle that we might turn blind eye on. That Sudan with its resources, south and north, both, if we actually stop our domestic fight and look and focus on to build these two countries with the resources we have, I think we have the ability. Now Russia is dreaming to have a حامل الطائرات في البحر الأحمر. What if Sudan and North Sudan developed that and we had a big one on there? What the world will do? We are strategic by position, by the map. We are strategic. We have the resources. Japan has more resources. They manufacture cars the best of the world. They don't have steel. And I want to respond to one question of Canada. Since I'm in Canada, Prof. Taik said that the Canadian could do a lot. Yes, there is a lot of engagement there, and the Canadian could do a lot to help the region. But there was very sensitive and critical point on this one, because Canadian is bound by certain agreements with the United States, with the British, with a lot of things. So there is a lot of hidden on the table. But how can we spell that out? And if they really knew what did the benefit come from, is to support the government of Sudan and let us overcome this rebellion stuff, and then we will rebuild this country from zero, and it will become. And once we are, Egypt will benefit. South Sudan is a strong resources as well. And the fight in South Sudan itself, because of its resources. Why they sanction South Sudan? Why the entire world is standing there and now they're sanctioning them? Why? Because there was one point. Because it is very wealthy, also with the gas, with petroleum. There is a lot of resources between the two countries. We were one country at one time, million. We're a million square mile. We have 12 rivers. We have cultivated land. We have a lot of animals. We have uranium. We have titanium. We have gas. We have a lot of things. But now, why people are not looking at that? You know what? They want us to be divided. They want us to be. They want us to be divided. They want us not to focus building our own infrastructure. So if we develop and we build a strong military, we build a strong base on the Red Sea. We build. We control. We control.
That is the point that I was about to ask you about it.
القمح ده بس آخر لحظة. One last minute. السلعة الاستراتيجية القمح ده أصبح سلعة سياسية. أصبح سلعة سياسية يضغط الدول. China has a big impact. China wants us as market. الصين عايزة السودان شمال وجنوب as market. They give us everything. Why? They don't want us to produce. But we will come back and we'll produce and we will show the world who we are.
All right. شكرا جزيلا مهندس. طبعا Yasser Al-Taib, you came in and I can you open your cameras please so that we can see you, and Bashmandis Masha, I can go to you, Professor. I have Bashmandis Suwara. Okay. Engineer Hazim Al-Khalid, Taban, you have talked much about how these things they can be handled, or how wars is getting out of hand of us. We have a question here from for your point of view. Can diplomacy work at this time in Sudan? Because we have seen all this move. Can diplomacy work in it?
Yes, it will work in one condition though. It's conditional. The diplomacy will work even from Egypt. Even from Abiy Ahmed himself, who is even from the Kenyan president who support the rebel forces, in condition. And the condition is they all submit that the rebel forces, the rebel support forces are rebels against the legitimate government, which Professor Taji stated clearly. And that was blessed. That's what pleased me. So if we want actual diplomacy and they want a vision to help the country, to help Sudan at their neighbors, we are one of the countries that we supported all around, all of them, at the time of the crisis. So here's the point. The first things, they declare the rebel support forces as the rebel كميليشيا متمردة يعني تقتل المدنيين تغتصب النساء والأطفال. Then, if they all state it and they push United United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, because they are supporting the rebels. If they push them so hard and put their pressure on them and the world as well, all agreed, and this is a rebel militia, then diplomacy will work here. But how could you invite me to a summit and invite a rebel against 100 years armed forces that rule the country right now? It's a representative. المجلس العسكري والقوات المسلحة رمزنا الآن، رمز الثورة السودانية ورمز السيادة السودانية، والوطن السوداني يمثل في القيادة المسلحة الآن. يبقى أنت كدولة عايز تشتغل مع دبلوماسية، عندك 3 خيارات. أول خيار تنبذ الميليشيا المتمردة، توقف الدول التي تدعمها بكل صراحة وبكل وجوه، وتقدموا لنا المساعدات الإنسانية الما مطلوبة منكم إلا أفتحوا معابركم لأطفالنا ونسائنا. ليش أطفالنا ونسائنا قاعدين؟ ده المطلوب. كده تعال نقعد معاكم دبلوماسية، كده تعال نشوف الحلول معاكم، كده ممكن ناخذ آرائكم، كده ممكن نستشيركم، كده ممكن نستشير جوارنا. ما انا واخوي على ابن عمي وانا ابن عمي على الغريب، كده نحن ممكن نستشير مصر، ممكن نستشير اريتريا. لكن اذا انت كان هدفك الاساسي مصلحتك معي، لكن انت ما ممكن تخط الدوله السودانيه وسياده الدوله السودانيه قصاد ميليشيا متمرده مرتزقه عشان استخدمتها في حرب اليمن، او استخدموها الروس في سرقه الذهب، عشان تجي تقول لي تعال اعمل معك دبلوماسيه. that's bullshit. يبقى زي ما قال بروفيسور تاج، ما في حل خارجي. اذا الدول دي فعلا، يعني حتى جنوب السودان زي ما ذكر بروفيسور تاج، اذا عندهم اذا يعني ممكن يتدخلوا، حتى مع انه ما محتاجين يتدخلوا نحن عشان ما يتقفل البايب الفالف ان اهليك، ما ينقفل الباب في اهليك. والشعب السوداني، وانا اثبت الكلام ده واتمنى سلفاكير يسمع الكلام ده، I'm 100% sure انه البرهان he will never do close بشاير export. You know why? Because this is our family too. The South Sudan is part of us as well. يعني قد نكون separated by borders, but we're still the same nation. We're still the same people. We still love each other, no matter what. Yes, the country is separated, but the nation not. Till this moment, we are not separated. We're separated politically, but in reality, no, we're not. So Al-Burhan will never dare to do that just for the sake of the nation, for the sake of the people, unless he has been impacted by other forces or pushed by somewhere. And I'll give you Professor Taj to comment on that.
شكرا. يفضل Professor Taj.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. Actually, I would ask the question: will diplomacy work to do what? Because diplomacy is multifaceted, and the room for involvement is very wide. Is it to quick start some kind of negotiation? The fact that people come and meet, that's not a process. We were working on the process for 4 years. 4 years to design a process that was acceptable to the parties. Professionals, supported by 3 international institutions, one in Denmark, one in Germany, and one in the United Kingdom. So the question would be, diplomacy to achieve what? To show compassion, because right now there is no compassion, let alone donor, let alone the dollar. That's out of question. Nobody will give Sudan money now. They don't want to give Sudan money right now. If the starting point is compassion, and compassion is to care for what is happening, even that is lacking other than lip service. To work on a process, I wish if somebody comes and says, well, you guys, you have a problem. Let's start working on designing a process with or without the RSF, because we are going to need a process to go from A to B. Even if the rapid forces are completely wiped out, the country has been broken. How are we going to bring it back? If you remember, in 2005, there was something called the Multi-Donor Trust Fund, where Sudan was supposed to be given $3 billion. They were only given $245 million. And the government of Sudan paid an equal, and there were 15 projects in 7 states. South Sudan got $1.2 billion in the Multi-Donor Trust Fund, and they were both managed by the World Bank. So that was a contribution. It was a and it was done in a very good way because we did something called the JAM, Joint Assessment Mission. We moved around in Sudan and South Sudan to identify where there is need, and we designed the projects that were funded by the Multi-Donor Trust Fund. So if you want diplomacy to work, we need to, if we are talking about diplomacy input, we need to define where they are needed, and we need to be practical. What are they willing to do? Because lip service will not solve the problem. Political will is what is needed. Right now, political will to intervene effectively is almost zero. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I have your last question before I just gave you some question from our audience here. I have 4 questions outside from audience, but I have your last question here to you. Since the crisis of Sudan erupted, it has caused humanitarian crisis. We have so many civilians who has crossed the borders, especially South Sudanese who are trying to return back. They are stuck in the borders. Some they have made it to Juba. Others are in Malut, in Baloch, in different parts of the country borders. The same in the north in Sudan. There are also humanitarian crises. Can you talk about humanitarian crisis in Sudan and South Sudan? For them.
Thank you. This is $1 million question. It is a very big question. And while Bashmuhandis and myself can touch on it now, I would strongly encourage you to dedicate a designated session, designated for it, because it touches the people and because it is a serious issue as well. Until now, there is UNMISS with a double S in Sudan. It has been renewed and renewed and renewed and renewed. So South Sudan, in the books of the international community, it is still a country where they need a peacekeeping mission. 130 them. Over 1 billion cost per year. If you give South Sudan $1 billion, it will change in 1 year to a much better situation. But the cost of UNMISS in South Sudan is over $1 billion per year. And it has been going on since 2005. I was talking to an undersecretary in Juba, and I asked him what his salary was, and he gave me the figure. When we transferred it into US dollars, it was $37 per month. And I asked him, why do you fly every time I talk to you, you are outside in one country or the other? Why do you come back with a report? Is there any value in these visits? And he said, no, the only reason I travel abroad is because there is a per diem of $100 per day. And without that, I cannot live. That's it. He was an undersecretary. He leaves the ministry to earn $100 per day for 4 or 5 days. At one time, he traveled 4 times in 1 month to collect the per diem. No value for South Sudan. If you look at the revitalized agreement, how many times it has been extended. And now the president gave a very strong, very comprehensive 4 pages letter of address on the 9th of July in the National Day of South Sudan. And he covered a lot of things, and he said, we will do this, we will do that. There is nothing that can be done without a census. We have got to know how many eligible voters are. This is the backbone of elections. And then we have got to have a constitution, and we have got to prove that constitution and approve it. So the legwork, the underground work that needs to be done is massive. They say there is no money. There is money. There is money. There is 170,000 barrels of oil between 135,000 to 170,000 at about 80 $85 that are being exported every day, 365 days a year. So there is money. So the question is not the availability of the money. The question is the utilization of the money. Where does it go? Does it go to benefit the people? Question mark.
Professor Taj, let me ask you questions
And the
here.
second,
Sorry to interrupt, but I would like actually to
yes,
ask you these real questions because أنا كرئيس لجمع الكفاءات السودانية بالخارج. The first things we manage
now,
in a humanitarian aid, we got $2 million of equipment, medical equipment, food and stuff, and we try to transport to Sudan at the beginning في شريان الحياة اللي قايم به تجمع الكفاءات السودانية. We managed to send the first shipment for free because these organizations, FH Canada is one of the organizations that will give you whatever you need, but you transport it because you are in a war zone. They don't trust that people will not be killed. So we managed to transfer the first shipment in there. And some of it has been robbed by the rebel RSF group. Now we are sitting on for the last 3 months, or for the last, for the last 45 days, we managed on the 3 months of war to send one shipment. Now we are sitting in like some humanitarian aid as well. We talk to South Sudan government. We talk to Assyrian government. We talk to Egyptian government just to help us to deploy this aid for women and children. People are dying from not having insulin. People are dying for kidney. They have to go do their kidney stuff. And we have all this. No country is coming forward. We get it, but no country. We are incapable of transforming or transferring this humanitarian aid. Now you tell me, this summit, could it be important to help us deploy this humanitarian aid from the Sudanese abroad, from the graduates that qualified Sudanese abroad? We collected the money, we collected that. We're not capable of transferring it. We have called every country, help us do this. Help us do this. Instead of that summit and spending all this money and putting the ties and sitting and eating food and laughing, they could have done this for us. We could have appreciated and we'll pay them back when our country will settle back to normal. So why do you think they're turning a
right.
blind eye to
Okay.
such requests?
Right. Okay. Do you have a pen in your hand and a piece of paper? Bashmandis?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Please take
Yes, I
this.
do.
Please take. Okay. Please take this number. +1
Okay.
613 808
808.
9471.
Yeah. 7. I will
Let
repeat
me
the number.
repeat. +1.
613 80
Yeah.
89 741.
Okay. That's my WhatsApp. Log it in and let us get in touch. I may have some solutions for you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And, al-
Really
and,
appreciate
al-
it.
Okay. And just you are
and
welcome.
also,
You are welcome. And
Professor,
just
yeah, I forward your email for you
sorry.
too. I forward your email to
Right.
by
Okay.
yeah.
Right. Very good. Very good. You are welcome. Right. And just to conclude, the I always differentiate between the humanitarian envelope and the political envelope. And this is what we did during the CPA. There is something called Traxler Agreement, Traxler. It is not very well publicized, but Traxler Agreement was signed before the CPA was signed. And it separated the humanitarian envelope from the political envelope. That's why during the negotiations 1998 to 2005, there was never a mention about any humanitarian issue. It was taken care of separately in a separate envelope. And Australia gave us 5 million. Australia, at the end of the world, gave us $5 million to buy trucks to distribute the food between the SPLM, SPLA, and the government held garrisons in South Sudan. So I am always careful when we are talking about the humanitarian envelope. We talk about that. This is different from the political envelope. The issue of South Sudan, there are two issues. If are not resolved, regrettably, the humanitarian issue will not be addressed. There are ups and downs. Yes, now there is an influx, and two governors of two bordering states of South Sudan with the North, they contacted me by WhatsApp and by phone, and they told me to tell President Al Burhan, because I have access to his office and I have access to the office of Kabashi and I have access to the office of Al Ata, direct access. They told me to tell them that these two states are welcoming Sudanese, that they will be protected, will be fed, and if there is need for a camp, they will build a camp for them. No UNHCR. This is just with the meager resources that they have. So the confirmation of Bash Muhandis that there is sympathy between the two nations, there is apathy between the two nations, was manifested by these two bordering governors to take the trouble to locate my phone number and to call me, and they said, we are on the record. Any Sudanese who crosses the border is welcome. And one of them said, if they cannot come to my state, let them come to Wow by plane, and I will collect them and bring them to my state. So while the situation is very bad, the only country where I felt there was genuine compassion from the citizens was South Sudan. We have a problem if we do not resolve the sanctions and deal with the three major benchmarks, if we do not bring to an end reliance on handouts by UNMIS, and if the government in Juba does not realize that they cannot govern forever, that there has got to be some relaxation, if human rights are not observed and the media is not respected and allowed to do their job freely without harassment, if the funds that come from the oil are not well directed to the benefit of the people, I doubt very much if we can deal with the human catastrophe and the human need and the hunger and the lack of development in South Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Taj. We have somebody called Nada Ahmed. Nada Ahmed, your device is not connected. I don't know you, and it's not cannot come up because there is a technical thing issue about that. So now we will go straight to the questions from the commentary side here. We have some our brother called Victor Makur is asking just his question direct to Professor. He said that, Professor, is Egypt really a genuine mediate or is just an hyena hide in sheepskin mechanism? That's one question direct to you. And I believe, can I give you another? There are 4 questions here. Can I put another one on?
Yeah, go ahead. Let us take them two at a time.
Okay. The second question is why the warring generals demand and rejected IGAD peace proposal.
Right.
Uh,
Okay. Well, let me go to the second question first. It's because it creates a background for the first question.
mm,
The IGAD was not uh, fair and balanced and unbiased uh, organization. The same plane that brought President Ruto from Nairobi to Djibouti, Yusuf Izzat was in the same plane with the president, Yusuf Izzat of the RSF. He was in the same plane that brought President Ruto. And the first thing that President Ruto did was to declare that in 10 days he's going to bring Al Burhan and he's going to bring Hemeti and he's going to sit them together so that they negotiate. All of a sudden, he became the Governor General of Sudan to command to bring people. And he goes on that he was also going to bring about the different Sudanese bodies so that they sit and discuss and they come to a resolution. Just like that. Where, with which funding, which grantors, what process? Absolutely nothing. And then in the final communique, they come up with this idea of bringing ESAF. ESAF is a force, East African force, that can be brought in, and it is under the AU. It has got absolutely nothing to do with the IGAD. And then to follow on, Abiy Ahmed, I don't know what happened to him. Maybe he was drunk. He decided that also let us create a no-fly zone around Khartoum while the army is hitting RSF with the Air Force to intervene in another country's airspace and to decide that they are going. Who are they? Who are they? They are a paper tiger now. The strengths of the IGAD in the CPA, there was no strength of the IGAD. It was the friends of the IGAD who were strong. It was Daniel Arab Moy who was strong. It was Lazarus Mbuweyo who was strong. It was Hilda Johnson who was strong. Not the IGAD. The IGAD were a decor. They were a name, nothing more. I was there from 1994 until 2011. I was there inside. So the IGAD was rejected because they started by being unbiased, because they did not behave themselves and respect the legitimate armed forces of the country, because they were biased. And there is, if you Google, all of you, Google the full name of President Ruto and go to Wikipedia, public. Ruto has been taken to court for commandeering land 4 times, and he had to pay compensation. So there was a conviction 4 times in his own country. He was stealing land from his owners. One of the owners had to flee for he was afraid for his life. Ruto was called upon by the International Criminal Court. This is not from me. If you don't believe me, I don't blame you. Just go to Wikipedia. Public. Everybody can Google Ruto in Wikipedia, and Wikipedia will come out, and the 5 court cases are going to come out. One of them is the International Criminal Court. If Sudan had accepted that a criminal like him is to head the group, I would have cut my passport into 2 halves, given it to the embassy, because it will be a humiliation beyond what is acceptable. That's why the IGAD was declined, because it was biased, because the change from Salva Kiir to Ruto was done in a malicious way. And I told my friend Barnaba Marial, why on earth didn't you walk out? Our president was humiliated in Djibouti. He was stripped of a position as head of the quartet group and given to Ruto, and nobody walked out of the room. I would have walked out. Tut Gatulwak should have walked out, and Barnaba Marial should have walked out, and the president should have walked out. It was an insult that was not called for. That's why we have rejected, or Sudan has rejected the IGAD. Let me go to the first question. As I said earlier, if you go roam around the 10 states of South Sudan, in the capitals, and you watch the walls, you are going to find بعثة وزارة المياه والزراعة المصرية في جنوب السودان. The mission of the Ministry of water resources and agriculture in Sudan. 10 of them. The person who told me that, I was not aware of it. I saw it in Wow and I saw it in Juba. I didn't know about the other. The person who told me was General Taban Deng. He said, Brother Taj, the sign is in all 10 states of South Sudan. And the Egyptian ambassador in Juba can actually make an appointment and meet with the president without the knowledge of the Minister of Foreign Affairs or the acting Minister of Foreign Affairs now. Diplomatically, this does not happen. When we go back to Jungule Canal was envisaged as a colonial project in 1904 by a British engineer. It was further developed in 1908. And about two-thirds of the canal were dug.
Yes, sir.
There
Can you
isn't
open your
a
camera, please?
single.
I'm just asking Yasser to open his camera. Yes. Thank you. Go ahead, Professor Tai.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there isn't a single benefit of Jungule Canal to the people of South Sudan. And let us go back a little bit to the history to answer the question. It was Battalion 104 and 105 who rebelled against the armed forces and joined the SPLA. It was 104 and 105 who disabled that huge machine. They put dynamite in it and they blew it up. And they captured 5 of the Khawajas and sent them across the border to the SPLM, SPLA camps in Ethiopia. Dr. Justin Yaj was in France at that time. The company that was drilling is called, it slipped my mind now, Compagnie Construction d'International. They are a French-Italian consortium. So they captured 5 and they were taken to the SPLA. Justin Yaj was the representative of the SPLA in France. So the French went to the late Dr. Justin and they said, our people. So he contacted me and I said, well, they are captured. What can I do? And Dr. John Garang insisted that he was not going to release the 5 Khawajas until all the Caterpillar equipment in the project was handed over to the SPLA. The lighter machines, they use them for agriculture and to clear roads. The D8s and D9, the heavy machines, they put steel plates on them and they use them as tanks. When you have such a gallant background of giving a slap in the face to the Egyptians, and now the government in Juba, at one point they were thinking of reviving the Yungule Canal. So this is just one example. The weeds from Bahar Naam and Lake No have now blocked the steel bridge in Kosti. The weeds have blocked it. The trains cannot go. Nobody is talking about that. There is so much weeds. I have got photographs of people walking across Bahar Naam over the weeds. It is so thick that you can walk on it and you don't drown. So when Egypt looks at South Sudan, they don't see us people. They don't see the interest of South Sudan. What they see is clearing the weeds and reviving Jonglei Canal so that they get 4.5 billion cubic meters of water per year extra to add to their 55.5 billion that's already their share from the Nile waters. Now, the danger of that, if the Sud is the largest wetland in Africa and the second largest wetland in the world after the Amazons. If that happens, then the Toj, where the animals come and the pastoralists come, and the evaporation, you never hear of a famine in Western Bahr al Ghazal. Why? Because evaporation from the Sud, The northern winds come, and you have got rains in western Bahr al-Ghazal and northern Uganda. It's called the green belt. It's called the green belt because of the sud and because of the evaporation from the sud. So the Egyptians have got no love lost with South Sudan. All they
Yeah.
do is they want water. So the agenda of Egypt is really to get 4.5 billion cubic meters of water because they're short of water. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Professor Taj, for answering this question, because there were two questions, but you have already touched them. I will not bring them up again because though I can just display them, I believe you have answered them already, like the intervention of the Egyptian in Sudan Peace Conference. Is it because Sudan is member of Arab League? That is the reason why Egypt ignored IGAD peace proposal. So that was his last question, but I believe you touched it in your answers before. But if
I
you
would
want,
like to weigh in on this when you give me the
But
chance.
very quickly, very quickly, really, the IGAD, the Egyptian meeting has got nothing to do with the IGAD. The IGAD wanted to go beyond the call.
mm,
All the Egyptians did, they made a call. That's all. They made a call and they said, "Let us meet and talk and discuss." But they did not go beyond that. Thank you.
I would like to weigh in, Mr. Isaac, when I have the chance on this.
okay, yes, you will weigh in, and also we need to listen to Yasser, because we are just coming to an end, and we saw him up here, and there are more coming up as well. Muhammad Kerbi or Kerba. Okay, I fadal Mahandis.
What I would like to state about the Arab League and the African League regarding Sudan positions, I think in 1953, the mistake that may been made by Ismail al-Azhari for Sudan joining the Arab League because of Abdel Nasser pressure, and even we have been rejected on the Arab League at the time. This is a history, speak for itself. And when Ismail al-Azhari and Abdel Nasser decided to put Sudan in Arab League, Lebanon was against it completely, and they call us, no, we're not Arab. Yes, we are Afro-Arabian. And in the same first conference that Ismail Azhari went on, Anania one started in the North Sudan, because elected government supposed to go back to the parliament to decide where they want to go. But Ismail Azhari made that decision for certain reason, for the 1953 agreement and removal of the British colonization and stuff like that. That is where we had the first wrong foot starting for the country, and that is where the war started between the North and South at that time. This is a history we cannot just ignore, and I think Professor Taj will have an enlightenment on that as well. Because of that, Sudan in Arab League all the time, but they did none to us, and even in the African League as well. The African League has its own agenda, because Sudan is a strategic country by geographical position. And when we are one country, 1,000 million square mile. Now, the question I'm going to raise directly to Professor Taj: why Arab League and the African League at the same time? Across the years, Sudan has been sanctioned for a long time, economical sanction because of hosting of Osama bin Laden, the Islamic regime that was taking the country. But yet, they did not ban, when they sanctioned Sudan, they did not ban the Samgh al-Arabi. They didn't do that, and still there was a hidden. They give the existing regime at the time for 30 years, the Islamic military. They give them the leeway to export gold, to export uranium and titanium, and through Russia. That Russia was doing that because Russia controlled the energy on the world, and we all know this. And they're only, when they sanction them, the only sources they have is Sudan. And this is a fight from 1972 about the uranium in Sudan. Even I had Fitiyam al-Kafata Sudaniya, they said the Sudan, I have the presentation, I will send it to you in WhatsApp. When Dr. Ibrahim Haju came out with resources of uranium and titanium in Sudan, حتى من غير ما يتحول لكعكة صفراء, send it, and they said the report from the International Atomic Energy, which I'm a member on it, they said it is all bad. It's not good. مشيع غير صحيح. But in the hidden part, Russia was importing it, US was importing it, all the country was importing it. And this is a hidden way they supported the regime government as well. And that's how they rule, even though there is sanctions. Now my question is very sensitive. I know the International Atomic Energy knew the resources of the world. They know every single piece on there. In April 19 الاجتماع اللي كان في البرتغال اللي قدم فيه ادريس هجو الحياه بتاعت اليورانيوم بتاعت السودان والكونكلوجن كان انها كلها مشيعه غير صحيحه. I redid the same in 2016 and I proved them wrong with the studies, with the analysis, with everything on there. Now this is a hidden fight nobody knows. This is a hidden fight nobody knows, which is controlled by Russia. It's controlled by Russia completely. That's why they support Hemeti. That's why they support this, the uranium in Sudan. في حفرة النحاس في بيضة. And that is why لما حميتي حرق جبل مون, because he knew there is something, and it is Wagner that they do that. Yes, Wagner went against US now, against Russia right now. That's a different issue. But the entire, and why they created Wagner? Why we created a Dam Sari either? Because as a armed forces or as a government, if you do things directly, you'll be punished globally. We are already punished in Sudan. Then now Russia created the same Wagner, and now they went against them because as a government they cannot do. But this as private armed mercenaries forces, they can do and implement the other countries' agenda without being involved globally and being questioned. And one more point I'm going to say, and I'm asking Professor Taj on that. The world is controlled by 5 veto countries. The 5 countries that has the veto, they don't want anybody to do anything. They won't allow anybody to be a permanent member. Why is that? We are in the, and what century are we at? Are we in the 18th century, 19th century? Why the world is being dictated and ruled by 5 countries only? Why do you think? And how do we change that? This is direct questions to Professor Taj, because I knew from my experience today with him, he is bold, he don't care, he just said the gospel naked truth, regardless of what. And I really appreciate being with you on the stage, because I was here to defend my country, defend the Sudanese armed forces, but I came to conclusion that there is still some hope. Some people like Professor Taj can stay the gospel naked truth. And I'm very glad, and I will communicate with you. And thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing the stage with me. Thank you for the State Lake Media that always enlighten us and give us the chance and the opportunity to express our views boldly, clearly, regardless of who we side with. And I really appreciate Prof. Isaac, Majak, and all the State Media Group. I'm really glad that I am part of this all the time. And thank you very much. And Professor Taj, I would like you to answer that question, if you don't mind. I know we take a long time, but I would, before Professor Taj answers that, I would like to give Muhammad Kareem.
Actually, you mentioned,
their answers.
Okay. You mentioned a number of points. The first point was the gum Arabic. We're the largest producer. Quite a bit of the product actually goes to France to be processed there before it is exported somewhere else. When the United States levied sanctions on Sudan, they made an exemption from the gum Arabic. The reason is gum Arabic goes into both Pepsi Cola and Coca-Cola. It goes into most of the medicines in the world. It goes into the photography, the glossing at the top of the sheets where you print. Arabic has not been used as a strategic weapon by Sudan. It has been used as a commercial and money earner rather than a strategic weapon. If you don't behave yourself, we are not going to give you gum Arabic. That's what needs to be done.
زي ما عمل مع
Bashir gave
القمح، زي ما
Wagner
العالم عمل مع
a
القمح،
base.
حولها لسلعة سياسية.
Definitely, it is being used as how much dollars we get, but it has not been used as a strategic
Exactly.
stick that if you don't behave, we are not giving you our gum Arabic. And coming to the Russians, Wagner was given a base right at the border with the Central African Republic, bordering and Hufrat al-Nihas, where most of these minerals are, is just south of that. It's also Redom National Park is in that part. And Wagner is packing up now. There is a lot of trouble, but there is almost concrete evidence that they are evacuating their personnel, and they are evacuating the base. But it was given to them by the government of the day at that time. The AU and the League of Arab Nations. The League of Arab Nations is, to me, is a paper tiger. Yeah, they don't have any real influence, and I have not seen any one conflict in the 22 neighbor countries of the Arab League that have problems like Syria, Iraq, that were resolved by an intervention of the Arab League. So they are a paper tiger. They are a club, mostly a club of ministers of foreign affairs, and people come in and go out of it. Nobody really takes it seriously. And we have a very bad experience with the League of Arab Nations. When we wanted to join in 1958, Lebanon came out openly and said Sudan is not an Arab country, so we object. And they actually voted against it at that time. Part of the problem is really ours. Are we in Sudan Arabs? Are we in Sudan Africans? This duality, the fact that we have got two hats, we wear one every time we need, has got quite a bit of confusion and has got quite a bit of humiliation as well. And I think once the country stands on its feet again, we may need to redefine ourselves. Do we belong? Because Africa is only a geographic uh, entity. It is not a political entity. There are 54 countries in Africa, 54 different political entities, and we are all within Africa. So if you are in an African land, I would have imagined that you are actually an African country. So we don't have support. If you watch around now, where are the rest of the African countries? Where is Rwanda? Where is Burundi? Where is Tanzania? Nobody's talking about us. The reason is that really these two hats that we tend to wear all the time. So just to comment on your question and your interest, I don't bank much on the League of Arab States, and I think they are a paper tiger. I don't think that we can benefit from them, and I believe that we need to redefine ourselves. If we're Arabs, well and good. There were actually no Arab before the Fatimites told the Arabs to go away, and they replaced them as soldiers with the Caucasus and with the Persians and so on. And the Arabs refused to go back to the Arabian land, which is a bare desert, and they came to Sudan. The mission of Abdullah ibn Abi Sarh, Abdullah ibn Sarh did not step his dirty feet in Dungula at all. That's proven now. Just read Ahmed Alias and others. Ibn Hogel, I mean, he did not step his feet in Dongola. And al-Bagh is not itifagiya. It is a sulh. When you fight with someone and none of you wins the war, then you come to terms. That's what it was. It was not an itifagiya imposed by an aggressor on the defeated kingdom at that time of Meris. So the history is very important. Redefining who we are is also very important. And thank you very much for your important questions. Thank you.
So I have a follow up, Professor on engineering, Baimandis, regarding about this. I see
Sure.
the article last week when the spokesman of Sudanese army, when he reject a call from IGAD that they want to send the troop to Sudan, and they reject that, and they even say that they will pull away from the IGAD membership. My question to you guys is that is it a good time for Sudanese government to pull out from IGAD? And the next question is, if Arab leagues say that he can offer to send the troop in Sudan to stop the war, will the Sudanese government will accept that? Thank you.
So, Brother Abraham, I will answer this question because I believe IGAD is harmful for both Sudan and South Sudan for 3 reasons. One, they have worked so hard. And they succeed in separating us. That's number 1. And number 2, they kill John Garang. They have a hand in killing Dr. John Garang. Dr. John Garang is a person, a real true leader that we believe in the unity of the country. Everybody knows that. Dr. John Garang is a unity guy, and he had a different dream from what executed through the IGAD for 3 reasons as well. If Dr. John Garang wasn't killed, the map of both countries could have been changed drastically from my perspective, I'm looking at. But at that time, Sudan was under sanctions, and the government of Sudan, the military regime, the Islamic extremists, they look for their own. Even they went far to kill Hosni Mubarak as well. We all know these facts. We will not. And Dr. Hassan al-Turabi, God not bless his soul, he stated out in في البرنامج بتاع شاهد على العصر. He stated out all the facts. He said it, and it's been published after he died. But here I'm gonna reflect one more important point. IGAD is working for certain countries that control the world. It is not for South Sudan benefit. It is not for the North Sudan benefit. It is for a benefit of certain countries. That the question I threw away before, that there is certain countries that control the world, and they wanted certain things. We are what do you say? نحن مخزن. Sudan, North and South, are just a storage of our resources. They want us to fight. They want us to do everything that they wanted to do, fight with among each other. We don't develop ourselves. Imagine a country like Sudan, a million square mile, had 12 rivers, had 200 million of cultivated land, have a lot of animals, has petrol, has gas, has uranium, has a lot of things. We're still behind. We're still considered third world country because they make sure that we fight among ourselves. We don't build an infrastructure, and they take our resources without even a blink. They put a sanction on it, but they take a Samagh al-Arabi. They put a sanction on it, but they take the gas and they take the petroleum from South Sudan. They do a lot of things. They want to make sure. نحن في السودان سلة غذاء العالم 12 نهر 200 مليون. نمتلك من الثروة الحيوانية، نمتلك من اليورانيوم، نمتلك من الذهب، نمتلك من اليورانيوم، نمتلك من السيليكون، نمتلك من الكروم، نمتلك من السبرينج رول، نمتلك ما نمتلك من موارد. يعني if we just think and get back. وحتى اتفاقية مياه النيل دي بروفيسور تاي talk about it in details. مصر عايزة شنو، ده عايزة شنو. نحن كدولة شمال وجنوب لو بس خلينا خلافاتنا الداخلية دي and get together and close these both countries. Let us close South خطة 5 سنوات. Let us close South and North Sudan and deal with just each other and forget about the world. Do you think the world will let me? ونعمل اسطول بحري. I design that one. جماعة الاسطول البحري والقاعدة العسكرية وخطها في البحر الأحمر ونكفل دولتنا ونزرع وناكل ونعمل حاجاتنا. Do you think this world will not get a permanent veto in the United Nations? We will. We definitely will. But how do we do that? How do we do that if we are fighting amongst themselves? How do we do that if people and our leaders are focusing? نحن محتاجين نفعل الطاقات الشبابية زي ما الثورة السودانية في شمال السودان دي في السودان دي طلعت بالميثاق الثوري لتأسيس سلطة الشعب، هو اللي يبني هذه الدولة من الحطام ويغير عقيدة المؤسسة العسكرية من حماية النظام إلى حماية الوطن والمواطن. نمرة واحد. لكن بعد دحض الجنجويد، بعد إزالة الحركات المسلحة في السودان موجودة، سواء الناوي سواء جبريل سواء كلهم، ما قالوا اسقطوا معانا البشير ده صح؟ طيب تاني ليه نعمل معاك اتفاقية لجوبا؟ المفروض طوالي أرضا سلاح. جنوب السودان استغلها كدولة مستغلة، نحترم سيادتها ونحترم شعبها ونحترم قراره. ليه القبائل صارت الصراع ده ليه صار في جنوب السودان ما بين الدينكا والشلوك والنوير؟ ليه الصراع ده في السودان بعد استغلال السودان 5 مليون جو راجعين الخرطوم؟ ليه؟ لأنه سياسيننا مدعومين من الخارج، مدعومين بمصالحهم الذاتية عشان they want to stay in the power. That's the main point. So let us think. عشان كده أنا بقول دكتور جنجر لو كان حي وتم الكلام ده it has a different view. أنا بدي بروفيسور تاج التعليق هنا، وأنا بعتقد إنه الأدمين إدوا ياسر وأستاذ محمد برضو فرصهم، لكن عايز أسمع من بروفيسور تاج في الحتة دي لأنها it is very important. يا أنت يا إبراهيم طرحت سؤال أنا بقول $1 billion questions، لأنه فيه if I read between the line on that, why are we suffering? Where there is just country resources in Africa. Sudan is the richest country in resources in Africa and in the world. That's well, if I read your question right between the lines, why are we poor? Why are we even talking about this right now? Why are we fighting? That's how I understood. I love your questions, and you just shed to me and open a door for me to think from other perspective. What the world wants from us. العالم عايز مننا شنو? And what do we need from them? North and South. And how we can build our nations and how we can go forward from here. And I think Professor Taj read between my lines, and I'm giving him the mic.
Thank you so much, Engineer. Yeah. Taban, we need also to hear later from Ahmed and Yasser, Professor for that.
Shukran. The question was pull out of the IGAD and the Arab League forces, possibly sending forces in. Pulling out of the IGAD needs a study to determine the cons and pros. On the face of it, and talking what I call, group discussions on politics, yes. But if you want to go for such a dramatic step like pulling out of a group where Sudan was actually one of the constituent countries of the IGAD, we played a very big role in shaping it up. So this is the call for an evidence-based, empirical proof kind of approach, so that we have a document for the decision makers that these are the cons and pros of staying within the IGAD, and these are the cons and pros of leaving the IGAD. That will be my technical response. However, the IGAD has got no forces. The forces are those of the African Union. And if you look at the budgets of these organizations, the Nile Basin Initiative, the IGAD, the budgets are so small that they really cannot, there is no development factor in their planning. And it is more of a club of politicians and heads of states, really, rather than an effective, it is not the NATO, it is not ASEAN. So they really have no teeth. But so that as people who are concerned and an enlightened group, I would advocate for a proper feasibility study of the cons and pros of pulling out of the IGAD or staying with it. The Arab League has got no forces. I've been in their history, all the 24 countries. I am not aware of any time where they managed to assemble forces to actually intervene militarily, and I don't think that it is in their charter. So I don't think there is an issue there. They can talk, they can support, they can do this and that. They can call for summits, but there are countries who left the Arab League and came back to it. The same way there are countries that left the African Union. Morocco left the African Union for a number of years. When the African Union decided that, yes, they will acknowledge Sahrawi as a 55th country, the king of Morocco pulled out for a good number of years, and then they called him back, and now he has rejoined. So those issues, while the two organizations really they have got no teeth or very little teeth, but if you want to deal with or out, that calls for a study. Thank you.
Uh, thank you, Professor. Let me move Yasser and Mohammed. Can you two open your camera?
Yasir has a technical problem on camera, but I think he can talk. I was just talking to him.
Okay, Yasser, if you can talk. Yeah, go ahead. What about Mohammed? Yasser, can you hear me?
I think you moved to Muhammad, and he will be back shortly. I was just talking to him. He's have a technical issue.
Okay,
Just move to Muhammad, and Yasir will talk.
Okay, Mohammed, can you open your mic? Mohammed having issues too. He cannot. Okay.
Abraham, I need to leave. I need to leave shortly. Yeah. Are there any questions from the audience?
I think this is let me see. So these two gentlemen, Mohammed and Yasser, they don't have a network issue, so we'll leave it that way. Let me see if there is more questions.
If there are no questions from the audience for me personally, then I would like to excuse myself. I have an appointment at 2:00, and it is about 15 minutes drive from here.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So we come to the end. My last question is, so both of you can answer it.
Abraham, I would like to very gratefully thank Prof for his input in this crisis. It was a very learning curve, and I'm very glad that I'm going to connect with you. We're going to talk. Thank you, sir, for whatever you're providing, for your hard work over 50 years, of course, that you have done above and beyond. And I'm very glad that I'm part of this stage sharing with a gentleman and a leader is one of the kind that I really appreciate. I'm looking forward for you helping me في شريان الحياة، ولك التحية والإعزاز والتقدير والاحترام الكامل يا بروف. يعني we need more like you on the front of the leadership on the world, so we can actually put the naked truth front and deal with the issue, not mixing up things together. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for talking about my country. Thank you for your support. Thank you for state media. Gratefully have a big gratitude for that. Appreciate it. And I'm very humble.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, Abraham. Take care. I need to leave. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. And thank you, Guilherme. Okay, so now we end to the show. Thank you everyone for watching. For this time, we will. I know Yasser and Mohammed, they're having a network issue. They cannot afford to open their video camera and their mic. So and also I just want to say thank you for coming in. So Isaac.
Before you hand it to Isaac, I would like to thank Isaac, Abraham, Majak, and State Media. I want to send this to my all followers, to the all Sudanese across the globe. south and north. I'm gonna send this message, and I want them to share it. If you're looking for the truth, and if you're looking for the reality, and if you're looking for the decency in journalism and the honesty, state media is the place where you can come and point your point of view, regardless of your ancestry, regardless of your color, regardless of what you do. I think state media has earned the love of the audience for their honesty, for their dedication, for their uh, concern for South and North Sudan and for the nation. And I stand here today, would like to say this. I'm felt blessed being in state media from the first time I appear on it, and I never customize myself. I just say what I feel, what I believe, and I really appreciate Prof. Isaac, Prof. Abraham, Prof. Majak for the opportunity they create, for the time and effort they put to organize such event and roundtable discussions, falling in just the benefit of both countries, North and South. And you gentlemen, all of you are well appreciated by me, are well appreciated by Qualified Sudanese Association Abroad, which consists of 7,500 members, and they're all very appreciative. The nation is appreciative for what you do for the countries and for what you stand and for what your role is to educate and send the audience the reality without sugarcoating and customizing. I cannot thank you enough, but I'm glad we are friends, and I'm glad that you guys invited me all the time to be on this show. God bless you. Thank you. And I would not miss to congratulate you on the 9th of July, independence of South Sudan. And I hope South Sudan prosper the way it should be. And the North Sudan as well settle the issues of the rebels, and we get back. And one day, who knows, we may be like Germany and become one again, because we are one as a nation. Politically, we are not, but hopefully that's what we're looking for. God bless you. Thank you, State Media. And I love you all. And I'm very grateful for you guys granted me opportunity all the time. Thank you very much, Prof. Isaac and Prof. Abraham. Thank you.
والله شكرا جزيلا باش مهندس حزيم الخالد نشكر اخواتنا Mohammed and Yasser. Even if we didn't hear from you, we also thank your participation. The network just prevented you, and we welcome you all the time. Lagos State Media is the main platform for everybody to use. I have to thank Professor Taj for being with us and all your our viewers. مشكوركم جدا. الله يبحركم وإن شاء الله جدكم يرجع كويس.
أيها الناس نحن بالظفر نعبر الأرض حيث ما وطنوا يسر الميت كلما ذكره ويعتز حين يقترن حكم لعل في الورى زمن لا ترى هل يعود ذا الزمن رجع الدهر حسن سيرتي ما بها حطة ولا درن نجد لا ليظلم أحد لا ولا لاضطهاد من آمن وكثيرون في صدورهم قتل السلاحات والإحن لوحة العرب أصلها كرم وإلى العرب تنصب الفطن أي غزا الدهر بينهم فتنا ولكم أفنت الورى الفتن أنا سودان
أنا سودان أنا سودان
Thank you so much.
William Atoyin Juba Malatori Ayambio Ping William Atoyin Benti Wala Kwaju Wow Ping William Atoyin Malkal Wala Pinyaram Ping William